Good afternoon, America. I'm Eric Erickson, and these are the 4 things you need to know this afternoon. Each day, the news cycle throws a storm of headlines at us. My job is to sort through the noise, tell you what actually matters, and give you an honest, conservative perspective on what it all means. Today, we've got 4 stories that touch on law, justice, and the economy, and even the structure of our democracy. So let's dig in. Up first, Abrego Garcia is back in the news. That's right. Abrego Garcia, he's back. He's the man who was deported earlier this year to El Salvador because of a bureaucratic mistake, despite having withholding of removal status that allowed him to stay in the United States with his family in Maryland. He was brought back to the U.S. after the courts intervened and ruled the deportation unlawful. Now, after reporting to ICE in Baltimore, he's been detained again. This time, the government is trying to deport him not to El Salvador, but to Uganda, a country where he has no ties. His attorneys say prosecutors offered a plea deal, plead guilty to human smuggling charges, and he could go to Costa Rica, where he'd be allowed to stay. When he refused, they shifted him to Uganda instead. Meanwhile, Homeland Security Secretary Kristi Noem described him as a dangerous criminal, an MS-13 member, human trafficker, and abuser. But here's the catch, and it is notable. Those labels aren't reflected in formal charges against him. Now, multiple truths can coexist here. One, if Garcia is guilty of human smuggling, prosecute him fully, convict him, deport him accordingly, or keep him in jail after the conviction. Also, the government should never play fast and loose with due process. Threatening to exile someone to a random third country as leverage in a plea bargain undermines trust in the system. Justice isn't about cutting corners or making examples. It's about fair process under the law. Conservatives should always defend that principle. Lastly, the man is an illegal alien, not a Maryland man. He's not a martyr. He's not a hero. It's time for him to return to his home country and get a clue. If he wants to be the martyr, well, he may just find himself in Uganda. President Trump is pressing again for the elimination of cash bail, arguing the system unfairly penalizes the poor. Let's be honest here. He's not wrong about that, despite progressive protestations. A wealthy man and a poor man accused of the same crime should not face different fates just because one can post bond and the other can't. But here's the risk. If we abolish cash bail without safeguards, we hand enormous discretion to judges. As every conservative knows, unchecked discretion often leads to inconsistent, ideological, and sometimes dangerous outcomes. In blue states where progressive judges dominate, you'll see violent offenders turn loose. In other courts, you may see political or personal bias creep in. The principle we should fight for is balance. Bail reform should mean violent offenders stay behind bars while nonviolent, low-level defenders aren't bankrupted before trial. Transparency and accountability must be built into our system that replaces cash bail. Otherwise, we risk trading one injustice for another. What's happening and why Donald Trump is right to act is that crime in D.C. most often can be traced to about 600 repeat offenders who benefit from a revolving door that's let them out of jail without bail, awaiting trial, and then slaps them on the wrist at trial. And the people of D.C. continue to see the same criminals over and over causing the crime. In a filing today, Intel sounded the alarm about the Trump administration's plan for the U.S. government to take a 10% take up to a 15% stake in the company. A 10% take would make Washington Intel's largest shareholder. The administration justifies the move as a national security measure, securing semiconductor production within the United States. But Intel sees danger, weaker global partnerships, nervous investors, declining employee morale, and declining sales abroad, and they're right to be concerned. National security does require a secure chip supply chain, but the solution is not government ownership. Once Washington has a seat at the shareholder table, business decisions stop being about innovation and they start being about politics. Markets get distorted, competition weakens, and taxpayers eventually foot the bill for the failure. There's a better way. Lower taxes, deregulation, smart grants or credits, and even legislation requiring chips purchased by the government to be made in the United States. That alone would motivate the chip industry without government controls. Letting government take equity positions in private enterprise drags us towards corporatism. That's not the conservative way. Intel's warning is a reminder. We protect freedom and prosperity by defending markets, not by nationalizing those markets. Lastly, the president has announced today the Justice Department will sue California over its new redistricting laws. California pushed through measures requiring a supposedly independent commission to handle redistricting and mandating voter referenda before congressional maps could be changed mid-decade. California's redistricting commission is actually well-intentioned, but it's turned into a scam. Many of the independents and Republicans on the commission were Democrats the other day, and they still are Democratic donors. California, however, has a constitutional amendment in place about redistricting, and Democrats are ignoring the state's constitution, opening the door for Trump to sue. Democrats could not help themselves, and they took Donald Trump's bait. That's now going to encourage other Republican states to redistrict. It's going to give the GOP a huge advantage because Gavin Newsom wanted to show himself fighting Donald Trump. Well, he threw Donald Trump right into the briar patch where he wanted to be. 4 stories, 1 theme, the balance of power between the individual and the state, between liberty and order, between markets and politics. As conservatives, our calling is to keep the balance anchored in principle, the rule of law, limited government, and accountability to the people. Because when government power expands unchecked, freedom shrinks. I'm Eric Erickson. These have been the 4 things you need to know this afternoon. Please subscribe to our YouTube channel, youtube.com/EW Erickson. Have a great rest of the day. Please keep the faith.